Hello and welcome back to Podcasting is Praxis. I'm David, my pronouns are he and him.
I'm James, my pronouns are 2020.
I'm Jamie, my pronouns are he and him.
I'm Rob, mine are he and him.
And no Alistair tonight, but thankfully we are joined by media expert and journalism enjoyer, Juliet Jacques.
Hi, I'm Juliet Jacques, my pronouns are dem and libs.
Oh dear. Rob had a good idea.
Yep.
Which was, let's do a cultural committee. It was a good idea. And then Rob had a bad idea and wanted to do a specific thing, which was dog shit, and we all hated it. Thanks,
but
Rob.
Not in a fun way.
Yeah, not even in a fun way. Just fucking, it was just bad. Just
Can I just say,
shit.
It's just boring.
Can I just say, being out for 2 weeks with like eye problems, and then coming back in, and the first fucking thing I'm forced to watch on this shitty podcast being this. Thanks, Rob. Thank you so much.
It's a great
really,
test
really
of your
warming.
new bionic eyes, and I don't think you should be so negative.
Well, look, I mean, a quick
Being
word on
left
this.
wing hasn't fucking taught you yet that vision is a curse, then I don't know what else to fucking say.
Exactly.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
I think I know what might teach you, but I mean, a quick word on this, right? I mean, I've followed your podcast for a while. I've been on a few times because I like the show, and I wrote to you guys saying, "Can I come on?" And when you talk about politics, I like it a lot because it's very kind of cathartic, and there's a level of rage about everything that doesn't really get expressed elsewhere, and I'm always glad to hear it. I really like it when you talk about books, because the books are usually kind of very enjoyably bad, and they're by sort of these rampant egomaniac people who I detest. When you talk about films, I mean, I am the world's worst film snob. I am insufferable. So, when you're talking about, I don't know, like Jerry Racemore and the mind-losing transphobe or something, I tend to sort of like glaze over occasionally. But Rob wrote to me saying, "Do you want to watch this film?" And I said, "Is it in English?" And Rob said, "Yes." And I said, "Is it in colour?" And Rob said, "Yes." And I said, "Does anything happen in it?" And Rob said, "Dunno." So I turned all the colour down on my TV and slowed the film down to about 8 hours, and got some friends to dub it into a really weird mishmash of various Eastern European languages. So I watched Skop, and I still found it really boring, even though I'd made it boring enough to be something I'd normally enjoy.
I'm just thinking, you've just put in my head Scoop Vitaskovsky cut, like that's what's in my head now.
You could have just like slowed the audio down to half speed and put it over June 2.
Oh, fuck's sake. When we do a movie, it's for us. The only reason we ever do cultural committee episodes is because we want to do them, and we really don't care. I can tell you right now, I've seen the metrics for cultural committee episodes, and I don't care.
He's not wrong.
I mean, we should probably tell people what we watched.
If you haven't switched off yet, you will now.
Yeah, we watched the brand.
Some paint dry.
No, we watched the 2024. We're being topical for a change. We're being topical and current, much like this movie. We watched the 2024 Netflix spectacular Scoop, which is about the interview, the Newsnight interview with Prince Andrew, and how such
an
a thing was
incredible
obtained.
film which gained the high achievement of making Gillian Anderson boring to watch.
Yeah.
Fucking criminal.
Can only do your best with the material. I mean,
Yeah. Like the best performance in it is the guy playing Saint Andrew. What am I saying? Sorry, Saint George Day today. Saint George's Day today has thrown me slightly.
Oh, fucking
no.
You'll never live that down, I'm sorry.
No, absolutely not.
The thing is as well, I'm going to immediately disagree with you because I thought he was nothing like... He looked more like fucking Gru from Despicable Me than he did Prince Andrew.
His appearance didn't matter. I thought he carried the material well, just because
You
he
say
had the
that,
most
right?
interesting
No,
material
no.
to work with.
You say that, but every single time they pulled out that one picture and prominently displayed the bad Photoshop job they'd done, it was so jarring. Oh, fuck. Oh, this film sucked. It was just fucking...
It was so boring!
Yeah.
It was awful.
But it was also incredibly self-congratulatory, so it's impossible to say whether it was bad or worse.
Yeah. Alistair, although Alistair couldn't be here tonight, he did give me his notes, and he's titled the notes, Tickets to Yourself, the Movie.
Yeah. The annoying thing about it is there's no reason to watch this. Like, the only vaguely interesting part is the interview, which is shit compared to the real-life interview, which you can just go and watch. Yeah. So it's a film that doesn't have to exist.
No, it does have to exist because, whomst among us has not asked about the riveting backstory of how did this interview come to pass?
Well, no, but if this film didn't exist, we wouldn't know how incredibly great the Newsnight producer who coincidentally wrote this film is.
The first thing it says in the epilogue, when you watch any kind of based on a true story film, and it tells you what happened to all the people involved, and the first thing it says is this interview won numerous awards, and I was like, well, we've just seen Kathleen Stock win a fucking award for journalism. If there's one thing British journalists are good at, it's making up awards for themselves and then congratulating themselves when they win them.
Yeah. I mean, this film had a lot of reasons to not go too far into that. Emily Maitlis went on to become a podcaster is hardly something you stick off the back of this.
There's no shame in it, guys. Come on.
No.
There is. We should be and we will be shamed.
There certainly is if you're Emily fucking Maitlis,
Well, we've certainly been punished, so yeah.
Yeah. It has to be for something.
But I mean, this was my sort of overwhelming feeling watching the film, right? Is you sort of watch it, and I wanted to sort of hate the film more on a sort of just sort of technical and sort of competency level. It's reasonably well acted. It's not appallingly written. I was sort of expecting to spend my whole time screaming at the television. I didn't really end up doing that. But what really got me was there was sort of no real sense of what the sort of stakes were, what they were trying to achieve. And it's not to say that, I thought doing the interview itself was a complete waste of time. I can see why it's worth doing. But I think a much more interesting film would be them doing the interview and then going mad with well, why aren't there any real sort of meaningful consequences for anybody here? Why is this not leading to...
He was stripped of his duties and titles.
Well, exactly, yeah, and he paid out £12 million of probably our money rather than his as well.
Look, I don't know what your problem is. When the climax of a film is a fucking Twitter feed, I mean, that's just good cinema.
And they,
yeah, exactly.
I don't know if they included it deliberately or accidentally, but there's one bit where you see one of the tweets that proves that this whole thing was devastating kind of global impact. But just underneath one of the tweets is someone just saying Epstein didn't kill himself, and I was like, yeah, I want more of that.
Yeah, that's the movie we all wanted to see. I mean, come on.
But no, I mean, but the movie I want is them going mad when they see that no one else in Jeffrey's little black book gets a call off the back of this being yeah, we're doing you next, mate.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good, but the movie I want is Hillary Clinton going full Sam Fisher.
It's not like any of them didn't know how to get hold of Andrew Neil if they wanted to do follow-ups.
Yeah. Or Peter Mandelson, yeah.
I mean, I think this expresses quite clearly why they couldn't do any of that shit, because they would have got a call from Andrew fucking Neil about it. So.
Exactly,
yeah. Yeah. It's really weird to see this, because the whole film's central thesis is, isn't journalism wonderful?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the whole central thesis of the thing. And in it, they show the active work of paparazzi, which is not journalism, and the active work of PR reps, which is not journalism. That's it. That's all that we actually see work-wise.
No. They show
5 minutes of craft and interview questions, which, again, is strictly fucking PR work at the end of the day.
I mean, David, it's not the message... The message isn't journalism wonderful. The message isn't Newsnight wonderful.
Yeah, but Newsnight is journalism in its purest form.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Well made. I mean, there were two things that came to mind watching this. And one, of course, is the famous Emily Maitlis, photo of her in front of the photoshopped Kremlin, Joseph Stalin Corbyn. But the other was that earlier in 2019, Newsnight responded to the Christchurch massacre, I think it was, by getting someone on from the far-right group Generation Identity to sort of lay out their concerns. Just one of the most egregious examples of Newsnight kind of, just giving itself over to the far right. And of course, a lot of the people watching this film, won't know that because they don't kind of follow the same media channels with the same kind of cultural and institutional memory that we do. But, I had both of those things in my mind when I was watching this, just sort of self-congratulatory wank. And, like I said, I think if you watch it in this very kind of hermetically sealed way, then it's not a terrible film. But if you sort of think about the sort of wider nature of Newsnight as a programme and the role it's been fulfilling in British politics and, I think in materially making a lot of things worse. And then think about, like I said, like the real lack of consequences for any of the people involved in the Epstein affair, really, apart from, the man himself. Then it's very sort of hard to take their sort of claims to be, Woodward and Bernstein seriously.
Well, I mean, I think A, you're all being negative, and B, I think what's important to note
we are all being negative, mate. It was shit.
Is that the important thing?
I'm here to talk England and English things down at St George's Day.
Rob, you've been on this podcast before, haven't you?
This is actually not going to be the only movie that's being made about this very interview. Amazon is making a second one with Emily Maitlis as the main producer, so we'll get another one, but where she's the main character.
Oh my god.
Absolutely. I know. If Emily Maitlis is in it, we're not watching it. I'm sorry, but
no.
That's an
One of these is
podcast episode.
I don't give a shit who's in it. We're not watching it.
Yeah. Oh, fuck off!
I don't care that much about Prince Andrew. Do you know what I mean, Rob? I know that you're obsessed and I love you, but I bought you that little plate. You just have to make do, mate.
Yeah, I would like it. Actually, this is going to be the deal. If you want me to stop subjecting you to these movies, you have to send me more Prince Andrew plates.
I'm just going to see what I can get on eBay. Hang on. You're talking about a tenner, I think.
All right. Oh, that's not too bad.
I know because I bought one for Rob.
The same price of silence as a Labour council.
But anyway, the most important thing, the most important question that I think the film raised was, why did the soundtrack sound like the entire thing took place in some kind of enchanted cave in Terraria?
Yeah, I've the second note that I took was 5 minutes in, and this has the OST of a mid-2000s horror game.
It's just fucking baffling.
I think they were trying to. I think they were trying to kind of do like the Social Network kind of style soundtrack, and give it like a kind of sleek but kind of cutesy but serious gloss. To try and make up for the fact that all of the people in it are completely detestable.
Yeah.
Are you sure they weren't just trying to find a magic sword? in the Hallow, perhaps.
I mean, that was my main reaction as well, was just watching it and being like, at best I just am sort of aggressively indifferent to these people, and at worst I absolutely despise them. So, yeah.
It made them all look like, I know this is meant to be their best face, etc., because it's polished up as fiction, but it made them all look like such cunts from start to finish.
Well, I mean, at least it was true to form.
Well,
I mean, shall we briefly sort of
let's go through it.
explain what's going on. So, like I said, briefly is Scoop. It's about the Newsnight interview with Prince Andrew. It's directed by someone I don't care about and I haven't bothered to remember. And it stars Billy Piper, Gillian, and Billy Piper as Sam McAllister, who is like the person who books people on Newsnight. And she is the voice of the people whisperer and also in love with the Daily Mail. It stars Gillian Anderson as Emily Maitlis by way of like when she was doing Margaret Thatcher. That's the only way I can describe it, because that's the only thing that makes sense.
That really fucked me off the whole time. Every single scene she was in, I'm just like, that's Thatcher.
Yeah.
I couldn't see past it. It's impossible. I don't know if it's because the Thatcher performance was actually like quite good relative to this one, or if it's just the fact that she can only do one fucking voice and it happens to be Thatcher.
Well, it's not just the voice. She was doing the the weird stretched lower jaw, thin lip thing. It was very Thatcher. Yeah.
She really, throughout the thing, I was like, is Gillian Anderson losing her voice? Because I swear to God, half the shit she says is unintelligible at times.
That's because half the shit Emily Maitlis says is unintelligible when you analyse it.
Yeah, fair, okay.
It stars, what the fuck is her name again? Not Kathy Bates, but...
Keely Hawes.
Keely Hawes, thank you very much, as Amanda Thirsk, who is the, primary assistant to Prince Andrew.
Prince's babysitter?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Rufus Sewell as Prince Andrew, who I do think is having a whale of a time, basically. He's the one having the most fun out of everybody in this movie. Yeah, it's the thing about this movie is why I wanted to watch it with the podcast is it's not necessarily
because you hate us.
Well, it's the thing because it's not necessarily terribly acted. It's not, there is a vague semblance of a plot, but it's very weird, and I think as per Alistair's note, it's mainly incredibly in love with itself, which is never a good sign. And I don't know. It has. I think it really likes sort of talking about the media talking about itself, but also not, because as we go through the movie, this is sort of constant thing where because it is all about the BBC and BBC News. There's this sort of constant thing where you're supposed to think that BBC is the hard-nosed, these are the real hard-working journalists, etc., but actually the people who do the real quote-unquote investigating in this thing are all in the tabloid press, and the main way you figure out anything about all of this is by characters scrolling websites and you seeing headlines on on websites from the News of the World. It's a very weird way of
that
going
guy,
about.
The first guy we see in the film is a News of the World guy, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So all right. So let's just start there.
Yeah, okay. So he's camped outside Jeffrey Epstein's place, taking photos of all the trafficked girls, which is surprisingly fucking useful service to society for a Daily Mail photographer. When you think about it, do you know what I mean? The one time in their entire history they did something good.
Well, at the same time, though, I think it was entirely by accident, really, because anytime the Daily Mail takes pictures of young girls, it's usually not for good reasons.
I said News of the World, wasn't it? So,
and at the end of the movie, there's there's the big triumphant moment by one of the Newsnight editors, something we're Newsnight and we do the stories that need to be told, that give victims a voice and hold the powerful to account. And it's by the end of this movie, I'm just did any of that happen then?
No.
You know what? Pooh's night, more like.
Damn.
What about snooze night?
Yeah. It was very snoozable, this entire fucking thing. And all they did, when you really boil it down, all they did was they gave Prince Andrew a platform to show that he was an odious dick. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they sort of seduced him into doing an interview, and then he just did himself.
Not even, Rob. We'll get there. We'll get there, but not even.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. All right, so let's just start talking about the movie then. So the sort of the opening is a sort of vaguely thriller where the shot slowly gets
vaguely fucking what?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is an interesting point about the film, right? Is it does sort of it hits all of the beats. If I was teaching it as an example in a creative writing course, you've got the opening where something is clearly at play with the paparazzo and photographing the traffic girls around Epstein. The kind of inciting incident where your protagonist Sam McAllister starts to sort of think, maybe we can make a story out of this, and the classic kind of story where she's like, she's the maverick booking agent, like all the others are really kind of conformist, and they're all saying, oh no, I don't think you should book this interview, and she's like, no, I think we can get an interview, I think it's newsworthy, and I'm going to pursue it no matter what, and I may not be one of the team, but god damn it, I get results.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, it's very much along those lines.
See, if you took this part of the film, right, but it was Leslie Nielsen instead, it would have worked perfectly as a parody.
Yes, it would have. This is the thing. I'm not objecting to the structure. I'm objecting to calling the content thriller because it's the most boring shit.
Yeah, but it's. I'm not saying it is the thriller. I'm saying it's reaching for that. It wants to be sort of, vaguely espionage-y, thrillery. There's some bits at the end where it's like, oh, will the palace allow this to go out? It's But my problem with all these sort of thriller-like elements is none of it works because
the photos and the van goes in the way, and he has to get out and chase him, and get ahead of him in the park and climb a tree and all this other dramatic shit. And it's like, I'm pretty sure I've seen a photo of Prince Andrew stood on Epstein's doorstep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What if American Sniper was even lower stakes than I could possibly care about?
Yeah, American Sniper, but it's about a News of the World journalist rooting through your bins, like some sort of overgrown fox.
Amerikanski photo sniper.
I can't take the shot, sir. I'm woke.
So we open up on our brave paparazzi photojournalist, and he gets a call, and he asks, "Is it him?" And he speeds on his way to Jeffrey Epstein's house, where he spots the royal protection officers, and they're like, "Oh, is he inside? Is he inside?" And then because this is sort of vaguely thrillery, and there's sort of an implication that they can't get caught taking these photos. So what he does is sticks his giant white camera gun out of the window and takes all the pictures of one of the Epstein girls walking by the car, and she's just looking directly at him. There's this vague element of oh, we mustn't get caught, but we're yeah, but that doesn't seem to matter a lick. Basically, it's a vibe. And then this is also, I will say, this is probably the only bit of actual journalism you see in the movie, and it's a paparazzi taking pictures. That's if there's anything,
and that's not even real fucking journalism, but it's this shit. No. I'm sorry, but it's really fucking not.
What if there were pictures of Spider-Man? Would that be real journalism?
that would be, yeah. That really would be, yeah, because it would be,
yeah. If it was Gillian Anderson playing J. Jonah Jameson, I would be well up for this movie. I'm not lying.
I said this to Jamie earlier, but what I really want next from Disney is a full InfoWars episode, but with the current J. Jonah Jameson.
Actually, do you think it's fair to say that Peter Parker was the first Instagram influencer because his job was just taking photos of himself?
Yeah.
I mean,
checks out.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Can't fault the logic.
So basically, but the terrible thing is our brave paparazzi guy doesn't get the money shot of Epstein and Andrew sort of in a way that he needs to. So then he becomes the world's most non-obvious man as he does a triathlon through the park and jumps fences and shit. He's like, oh, I mustn't be seen. Let me be the most obvious man in the world.
Has that man not been arrested 4 times in the course of trying to get that fucking picture?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, basically, he takes the shot, and it's one of the famous pictures that, if you follow this story at all, it's one of the famous pictures of Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein walking through Central Park together.
Sounded like an anti-Semitic pronunciation of Epstein to me.
Yeah, well, can't be helped, I'm afraid. Yeah, and basically he rolls back, on the rock, and he's got his precious picture. And basically we see what I can only describe as his orgasm face, and then we cut to 9 years later, and we have a jazzy intro scene with Billy Piper playing Sam McAllister, the Newsnight booking person.
I think, sorry, just as we get the intro scene, as we get the establishing shot of the BBC building on Portland Place. Do we see like a little statue of George Orwell or something?
Yeah,
there's a few there's a few little repeated references to Orwell in this that are just kind of weird. They don't really make sense.
She says hello, George, as she walks into the fucking building.
Yeah, and you see a thing saying Big Brother is watching you at some point. And I was just like... What?
It's when she quits.
Yeah. What does that mean? Why is that
It shows a bunch of different fucking things on a desk, and one of them is a fucking postcard with Big Brother is watching you on.
It's to do... Right, so I think I know what this is. And Juliet, you might... Tell me if this rings any bells. But isn't there this whole thing with the BBC and like a little bit of a cult of Orwell worship that goes on there, which is why there's the statue, among other things?
Yeah, I mean, I think he worked there or did some work there.
Yeah.
My understanding is it's just like it's this cult thing of, we're just like George Orwell, which is like, absolutely, sure. So I wouldn't read too much into it.
They shop communists to the MI5 as well. I mean, you know.
Yeah. I mean, grassing up communists is probably like the favorite thing the BBC does. So, you know, like, what else is new? Anyway, so we cut to Billie Piper, and she plays sort of the maverick outsider, but as Juliet said, damn it, she gets results. And the intro music that is played is Don't Rain on My Parade, which is just like immediately grating. She walks into the building to the background of, and I think that's like a real scene of, I think, the BBC Director General, you know, announcing that the BBC is facing cuts and she's going to have to cut staff. But, you know, the scoops are important. And, you know, how does the BBC remain relevant in this modern age with all the TikToks and the Twitters? Well, it's by getting the big scoop, of course.
Yeah. So how do we go about doing that? Let's get Nigel Farage on to talk about Brexit. It is 2019.
Yes. But it's also clearly implied that, like, doing that is actually not, you know, it's not what the people in the street want to see and hear from the BBC, you know?
They just won't play well with Dick and Dom in the bungalow.
Yes. I mean, if they really wanted to establish that it's like sort of spring 2019, aren't we having interviews with Change UK?
Yeah, that's...
This film needed more gapes.
Yeah. Where's my Chuckaramuna reenactment scenario? Yeah, 100%.
It's wild to do anything covering fucking Mateless and not show Corbyn derangement syndrome at least once.
Yeah.
I've just finished a play about Corbyn derangement syndrome, so, you know, maybe we can cover that next.
We've never stopped covering it. Such is the fate of being British.
Right.
Does this podcast count as research material for you, Juliet?
I think it has done, yeah.
Yeah. Well, he wrote an article today in The Guardian for St. George's Day saying that, like, you know, the best way to celebrate St. George's Day is to, like, not make war on your neighbors, and it would actually be better if we, like, tried to get some peace agreements going instead of just, like, arming various people all over the world. So everybody, you know, today, of course, had their say again. It's like, oh, you're friends in Hamas, you want to be friends. So,
and then a load of fascists went to the cenotaph and started kicking off on the police. Like, about 2 hours after Starmer was posting about reclaiming the flag from the far right.
Oh, God.
Anyway, look, we might be getting sidetracked, but I think we're desperate to not talk about the film.
Yeah, I think if Starmer... The only time I want to see Starmer reclaim the flag from, like, the far right is if he's going to actually, like, fucking, do you know what I mean? Fight them for it.
Have any of you seen Punishment Park?
No.
Oh my God, Peter Watkins' film about these dissidents who were like rounded up for protesting against the Vietnam War and sent to this sort of like punishment park in the middle of the desert where they're allowed to escape if they capture the American flag. It's absolutely brilliant. Really, really brutal film. Good. And maybe we should make him do that. All of the Labour front bench, actually, just they can all like escape the desert if they can like recapture a sort of like tatty St. George's Day flag with the name of like a 7th Division football team written on it. If they could specifically recapture the Cost Shorten Athletic St. George's Day flag, they can leave.
Come and have a go if you think you're tough enough.
Exactly.
Keir Starmer proudly displaying his Millwall tattoo, basically.
Wes Streeting just coming back with a Braintree town flag, and it's like, no good, mate, out. Anyway, what was happening in the film, Rob?
Oh yeah, God. So anyway, so the reason you know that like Billie Piper's is or Sam is different is like she like wears really loud clothing and has like a blonde perm instead of like all the dweebs and, you know, sort of nerds, the Guardian readers basically who work at the BBC. And the other reason is like, you know, they're like, oh, we should get Nigel Farage on, and she sighs and she says, look, I can get Lupita and Jongo on to talk about race and movies, but then, you know, the old boys, the real BBC heads don't want to listen because obviously, like, you know, that's not the right sort of news. Whereas, you know, Billie Piper does know what the right sort of news is.
Yeah, because she came from the Daily Mail, where the real news is.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so in it they say, oh, that's not a good to lead with, I believe is what they say. And they they bump it to number 2. And I think what's going on here, like I was puzzling this over, and I think this is her showing that, look, I'm not just a tabloid journalist, I do care about culture and bigger things, but god damn it, the BBC only cares about headlines as kind of like externalization of the criticisms that get put her way based on her booking history. So, like, all right, cool, sure, we definitely needed that in this film.
Yeah,
the
BBC famously hates tabloid shit. That's why it spends all of its time chasing after whatever the Sun and the Mail have reported on.
This film feels weirdly defensive, I've got to say, of its main character.
Incredibly defensive.
Yeah.
Like
it's defensive because it's fucking journalists, so they're going to be defensive because they're the thinnest skinned motherfuckers out there, and also because it spends absolutely none of its time actually making an effort to show you what's good about it, because it rings hollow if you actually do attempt that.
Yeah.
If you actually try and make a concerted, honest, open defence of what journalism is, you're immediately outed as a fucking monster because of what journalism is.
But even if you sort of believe the lies that they're telling themselves as journalists, like, you still don't really get that much of a sense of what they think this interview might achieve. And, you know, as I said earlier, that's not to say you should watch it and think it's not worth doing, but, like, you never really get a sense of them thinking, right, well, if we interview him and, you know, he incriminates himself, you know, what do we want? Do we want him to get prosecuted? Do we want him to have to settle out of court? Do we want to do substantial damage to the wider royal family who don't really come up at all? I mean, you get Andrew coming back at one point and saying, I've just spoken to Mummy or whatever it is, and that's the only time you get any real reference to the Queen. You know, there's nothing about Charles, and, you know, there's a moment where Andrew does seem to incriminate himself. They set up a conversation to try and set up the interview, and at one point, like, Andrew says, look, why do you keep asking about Epstein? I knew Jimmy Savile much better. And I just thought, yeah, and so did, like, all of the rest of your family.
Yeah.
What about
and,
that?
Like, and how many people at the fucking BBC?
Well, exactly, yeah. And, you know, how many former prime ministers that Gillian Anderson has played in other series, for that matter. So yeah, there were sort of like things like that where you thought, okay, well, the sort of stakes or the wider implications or potential consequences of this could come up, and they just don't.
Well, I mean, they do in this scene, like, they do sort of say, like, or you know, like, she gets put down, but, you know, she defends herself because one of her colleagues says, like, what have you actually done to, like, book some people today? All you've done is, like, gone out for a 4-hour lunch with Piers Morgan and now you're back. And it's like, yeah, no, that sounds as about the right level of journalism in this country. Like, you're just getting drunk with the worst cunt in Britain.
I mean, we'll get there, like, but yeah, that shit comes up as well.
Yeah, so anyway, it's time now to introduce Prince Andrew, because he's doing an event at the palace, and he's played by Rufus Sewell. Like I said, he's having, I think he is genuinely having, like, a good time with the face prosthetics, the giant big jowls that they've put on him. And his long devoted assistant, Miranda, played by Keely Hawes. And sort of I do think, like, he does quite a decent job at doing an Andrew. Like, just sort of, you know, looking at the floor, avoiding giving any answers, looking at his feet, and sort of mumbling, and sort of being like this overfed, well-treated pig, basically.
But this is why like this works, because that's a character.
Yeah.
There's like there is like, as much as he's a fucking dickhead, he is, to like, you know, in the most offensive way I can possibly say it, a character. Much in the same way that Prince Philip was a character.
Yeah,
like,
and they also...
You're going to have something to work with there, but if you're playing fucking Emily Mateless, what the fuck have you got to go on there beyond dead eyes?
Yeah, they also went and like they pulled in like external stories about Prince Andrew, including the teddy bear one, etc., in order to give him something to chew the scenery with, which I think kind of makes it kind of work, frankly. All the rest of them, I mean, all you can say about the rest of these people is that they're all deeply unpleasant hacks who, you know, the more public-facing ones of them, their entire virtue is in trying to make themselves seem so polished that nothing sticks to them. So there's nothing there. It's like, you know, punching a fart. You know, it's like wrestling with a noxious smoke. There's just nothing there to really dig into character-wise, which is fun and interesting.
Yeah. So, like, then we cut back to, like, so basically she sees this pitch at Palace, she remembers that Prince Andrew exists, and then basically, you know, she does her real job, which is to type things into Google and then read the results. And it's just like, the thing that she sees, because it's funny, because it's like, you could do this in so many ways, but like, the first thing you see with like the results, when I think she literally types in like, Prince Andrew, Jeffrey Epstein, and it's like, you know, you see like a big banner, like a banner for like the news of the world, and then the Sun, and it's like, that's interesting, you know, like you couldn't have found that out a bit different, but that's of course because that's part of Sam McAllister's character, is like, you know, she is in with the tabloids, and she says, well, if the BBC had, you know, only half the reach of the Sun or the Mail, then maybe it would get something done. You know, like she goes on this sort of anti-newsnight rant that's only, you know, seen and talked about by the North Islington elite, basically. You know, at their fancy dinner parties.
I just want to come in with something here. Like, you've mentioned the News of the World a couple of times now, but didn't that die because of the Leveson inquiry? Which is another, you know, thing that was on my mind watching this, and particularly the scenes with the paparazzo at the start of the film is, you know.
Yeah, isn't it? Didn't the American News of the World keep going though? Isn't that who he's working for?
Oh, is that what it
start?
is? Right.
I thought
so. No, at the start it's before the Leveson, isn't it? Starts like 2010.
Yeah, the start is like way before. The News of the World was still a going concern then. But it's not at the time the film is the main thing actually happens.
But the sort of baffling thing about all of this is like the main plot of the movie is essentially how did they get this interview? But all the background story, the stuff what the interview is about, which is Epstein and the connections and Virginia Roberts and, you know, all the incredibly dodgy stuff that goes on, they never show any of it. The only way they show it is like secondhand on screen, like Billy Piper reading the web pages of the News of the World, or looking at photos that somebody else took, or like there's no
because the material. That's what journalism is now.
Yeah. So it's all like incredibly secondhand and sort of remote, and it kind of removes like why is this so important? Why are the stakes so high? And it's like if you didn't know this stuff beforehand, this movie would not inform you as to why it's relevant or important for that matter.
So I'm not defending the film, which shouldn't have been made, let's be clear. But the reason they made that stylistic choice is because essentially there's a whole like complex issue around selling the stories of abuse victims or using the stories of abuse victims for profit. So what they're doing with this is essentially using stuff that's in the public domain, reporting that's been done on it, rather than reenacting or giving you like first-hand accounts or things like that. Because that would essentially open up liability in the USA. This is why this film shouldn't have been made, right? That doesn't just, like, you know, the correct response is to go, we can't do anything interesting, let's just not make this then. But I think that's why, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, make it in fucking 20 or 30 years when all the fucking possible facts that could come out have come out. Don't just fucking do something based on a choose your own adventure of how to get fucking sued.
Yeah, but it's not enough for these people to just win the awards that they've made up for themselves. They need things made up about them to win awards that they've made up about themselves as well.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Rob. I'm disturbing your delightful in-ear entertainment to tell you that we have a Patreon at patreon.com/praxiscast. You can go there for more episodes, our Discord, bonus clips, and much, much more. This is also me begging you for your money in exchange for goods and services. Thank you. Oh, very well then. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Get ourselves some snacks. Bye. You know, we get more plot, but and then at some point, like, she has another row with a coworker who then goes to like snitch to his manager, and then he literally says about Sam McAllister, "Oh, I can't work with her. She's so very Daily Mail." Like, that's a literal line in the movie. It's very, very, like, I can imagine that people on the BBC do complain like that, but like the line "she's very Daily Mail" is just wonderful.
I don't even think they do. I think the beefs between the Daily Mail and the BBC, etc., are all very high level ones, and everyone else doesn't care, because how many of the people at the BBC used to work at the fucking Daily Mail?
I don't know.
And vice versa, because it's just one big incestuous pool of the same people.
My kind of experience, I mean, I haven't worked directly for the BBC or for The Guardian, but I've been around people who have. And my experience is that, actually it's sort of the more lower levels, people are, more sort of at least liberal, if not actually to the left, and very, very angry about and frustrated about the way that upper echelons of management behave. But, their voices are not really allowed to be heard. They don't really matter. I mean, the sort of way like trans stuff's played out at The Guardian, I mean, not to get sidetrack on that, but the way that's kind of played out with, lots of the sort of supporting staff being, really kind of pissed off at having to kind of, do the legwork that gets like another fucking Sonia Soda editorial published or something, yeah, exactly. Just to pull one name out of a hat. But that's often the way it does kind of work once you're away from the people making the big management decisions and the people whose sort of names and faces you actually see, quote unquote, the talent. That's my experience of it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I know someone who worked for BBC, and they said, pretty much kind of matching what you said there, Juliet, that the more senior people were genuinely huffing their own farts about being better because they worked for the BBC in a journalism capacity. So given that this is the Newsnight team it focuses on, what is it? What is the particular grouping that this like lot falls under at the BBC? Does anyone remember? Because it was covered in the film, but I can't remember.
How do you mean? It's just the Newsnight editorial team.
Is it just Newsnight editorial team? Okay, I wasn't sure if that was part of a larger department. Yeah,
they'd have their own dedicated, kind of team of researchers and stuff. So yeah.
But my understanding is, like, given that they're a kind of prominent and somewhat senior team, you don't just get put on that if you're starting out.
No, you have to work your way up. Yeah.
I can sort of believe that they've all got a chip on their shoulder about being better than, News of the World, Daily Mail, or all the rest of them, frankly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, not, to be clear, but...
No, not.
Yeah. Anyway, we get some scenes again of Sam is a very real person because she lives in the real London of tower blocks and flats, and she eats takeout kebab while talking about how to talk to girls with her son, because some people talk to girls and some people do some other things with girls, and she's a good mum, she's a single mum. I don't know if she is or not. This is all from the book, but but she's very human. Yes, exactly. And then sprinkled throughout it are these lines that like you're supposed to pick up and like take with you. She says like to her son, because he wants to ask a girl out, most people really want to talk, but they are really bad at listening. It's like, ooh, I wonder if that's going to come up later in the movie. Yeah,
fuck's sake.
That's called foreshadowing.
Yeah,
Chekhov's platitude.
So she gets a first meeting with Miranda, the sort of Stooge 1 of Prince Andrew, and they sort of have a little chat, and, you know, she says, look, you need to have an interview with Newsnight because of all these allegations around Andrew. You know, a good interview can help you clean it up, blah, blah, blah. And then they sort of start swapping, like, stories about what's your boss like, and then Miranda asks Sam, what's Emily Maitlis like, and then she literally says the line, she's like Harry Potter with his wand, but instead of a wand she has her big pen, and it's just like, fuck me.
That does raise the question of, like, what is the writer who's created this Emily Maitlis like, you know?
Yes.
Was that fucking character called Miranda then? I thought her name was Amanda.
I don't remember. It's Miranda or Amanda. I may have written it a few different times in the course of me taking notes.
Fair enough. Well, carry on.
It's Ananda. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, how are the episode edits you're doing for Ananda doing, David?
Shut the fuck up.
So yeah, there's some other things happen. It's not that interesting, but, you know, now all of a sudden the story has to go into overdrive because she gets.
Have we finished? Is that you summing up the rest of the film? Is it?
This meeting is the one where it turns into actually. Do you want a real drink? That's what it is.
Yes, that's what that turns into, yes.
And then we do real journalism, which is sitting in a fucking pub, having some fucking drinks. That's what the real journalism is. This is what they took from you, etc., etc.
Yeah.
This is what they took.
Fucking hell. Honestly.
So then, you know, some other boring things happen, but then, you know, as it turns out, Epstein is arrested by the FBI, and by God, now it's a real story, and the prince can't duck it anymore. So Sam goes to Ananda's house at midnight to say, look, he has to come on Newsnight now, because otherwise, you know, he has to clear this up, etc., etc. And then, of course, Ananda screams back at her, how do I know I can trust you? And she says, an hour of television can change everything. And it's like, yes. Yes, very much. Thank you very much. Then we do get that delightful scene, James, that you were talking about earlier with Andrew, like, shouting at, like, one of his maids for not putting his teddy bears in the right position, which, again, like, that's some actual, like, good character work, because he gets something to do, basically. And that, you know, now the show is on. The Prince Andrew's team confirms it will do it, blah, blah. But, you know,
do you know what, actually, sorry, just to go back to the fucking it's wild that this film feels the need to cover that, because you've got an entire story about everything revolving this guy is very close friends with a fucking known and convicted sex pest and paedophile, but we need to show that he's a nasty guy, so let's have him shout at a fucking servant.
Yeah. It's a little bit.
It doesn't. If anything, it detracts from what the fucking film is trying to say by including it in there, because it's so petty as to be fucking nothing within the context of, you know, the wider accusations. It's just so dumb.
I think it's narrative set up for establishing that he's got no fucking clue about how he comes across and about, like, proper proprietary. I think it's character work, just simple as that.
I mean, yeah, maybe, I suppose, if you're bad at writing, yeah, okay, fine, I get that.
Yeah.
But it's not necessary in any way, shape or form is that scene actually like a necessary thing that genuinely advances that, because there's plenty other opportunities for that to come across. The Jimmy Savile comment is perfect for that. That's what you want. The Jimmy Savile joke that he makes is perfectly encapsulatory of all of his fuck-ups and all of the reasons that he's going to fuck this interview up. You don't need he's a bit of a cock to a servant to back it up.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people who I'm sure are absolutely fucking appalling to anyone who doesn't kind of, you know, quote unquote matter, who can, you know, get through an hour-long interview without saying things that are kind of comically and memeably, like, weird and incriminating, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I manage it.
Oh, well, that makes one of us. Thankfully, we edit these before we put them out.
But then they have to get clearance from like the heads of the BBC, because of course they do, because this is about the royal family. And of course the heads, like the head of the BBC and the head of the BBC Trust are like at the opera in like box seats. So it's like, of course they are, because, the BBC, you see it's an elitist, out of touch institution. Again, I don't think they wouldn't be, but it's like for like a film that's ostensibly obsessed with like hard-nosed truth seeking, they continually like say, actually, BBC quite shit, isn't it? Like it's kind of it's a weird set of choices are being made throughout this.
It's like they managed to tell the truth despite the BBC, but not because of it. But the BBC and particularly Newsnight are still really important and good.
Yeah,
yeah. I get this kind of comes back to the whole problem with it, though, is that it doesn't want to face up to any of the truths around modern journalism.
Yeah.
It just wants to pretend that actually it doesn't matter that it's shit and really difficult to get anything done, or even to ascertain important things that might be done. But it's important that, we do those things. So deal with it, but also congratulate us.
Yeah, and, as I sort of talked about earlier, like the role of the BBC, and particularly a programme like Newsnight and a presenter like Mateless, in making sure that, the only vaguely plausible, even like social democratic movement we've known in any of our lifetimes was defeated, and, defeated in part by kind of building up the far right as a force against it. And, to make a story that's set in sort of like November 2019, and like none of that is sort of anywhere lurking even in the background of this film. I mean, I get that it's not part of the story they're telling. I do understand that, but it was one of the things that jarred with me. And this is sort of interesting film about the film is that the film itself, as I said earlier, like I didn't get as angry with the film as I thought I was going to. But the problem is that all the things that are around the film that are just, the film is not capable of addressing and deliberately made itself incapable of addressing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. So again, there's just another series of people sitting in a room talking about the actual deeds and misdeeds that went on that are never shown again, but like through secondhand. And then we get this another sort of beat of this. Sam McAllister is sidelined. She doesn't feel part of the team. Like the others are BBC people, and she wears loud clothing and reads the Daily Mail. And so she gets very upset, and she says, "Oh, if I can't do my job like this, then why am I here?" So she calls her mum, and her mum says, "Is this important to you?" And then if it is important to you, you should make your way in the room and, demand to be present. So then the next day she just shows up in the room and nobody kicks her out and she's just part of the meeting. And I was like, but then, so what's this doing here? What was the point of all of that?
It's fine, no, but that's fine, though, because she's got the people person on her side, Emily Mateless.
Yes.
Like, who consistently goes to bat for her when, again, she has arranged a meeting. I'm sorry, but Keir Starmer drums that shit up as a positive quality, and I'm not willing to believe it is.
Keir Starmer didn't. That was Glenn O'Hara, to be fair. Politics.
In a profile for
politics
GQ.
Prof. Yeah.
To be fair, can she take a memo, though? Because I don't see her do that at any point during the film.
Yeah, these qualities might not be spectacular, but they are important. It's good that this film reminded us of that,
Well, I mean, the other thing that the film reminds us of, because like it's literally, it's always good when people just lay their motivations out in speech instead of, show and tell. Because like Emily Maitlis just goes, why am I doing this interview? Why am I going for it? And she says, well, because of Monica Lewinsky, because I had Bill Clinton and I didn't press him. And, he got away with it. And it's like, why did you not go after the president of the United States? Maybe was there something more going on there? Should we explore any of that? No? Okay, well, I guess not then.
Yeah. Alistair just has a note that says, Mateless concern for misogyny rings very hollow. Which, like, yeah, Mateless's concern for fucking anything in this feels hollow. Like, I'm sorry, why isn't she fucking losing her mind half the time about Jeremy Corbyn? I'm going to keep coming back to it. It's fucked up and weird that she isn't plotting the downfall and overseeing fucking hat photoshops.
Well, yeah, like, you know, I did think about that in the scene at the start where they're all going over, like, the things they could cover on Newsnight. And I was like, surely there's, like, 7 of you, like, clamouring at the bit to, like, do a post story about how Corbyn's worse than Hitler, like...
Yeah.
With appropriate photoshops, you know.
Everything that happens past December 2019, why is Emily Maitlis not just smoking the world's largest cigarette after victory?
This was November 2019, wasn't it? So this is like election campaign time.
Yeah, I think it was.
Which is another thing that just
before,
doesn't come up at all at any point.
Yeah, because they were busy with this. There was nothing else going on.
It's more important than, you know, whether the sort of, you know, social democratic left or the kind of far right come into government, you know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Background noise.
The most important thing, I think, is that her producer tells her that, you know, she's got the best knees in television, which, you know, important byline.
Oh yeah, we need to make sure that we see Andrew staring at him, so we see what a perv he is. Yeah, like
as if we needed some more underscoring of that.
Yeah, so then it's because it's not clear that he's friends with a paedophile.
So then we get to, it's the big day of the interview, and the first thing we see is Gillian Anderson running through the park, you know, and sort of rehearsing the questions in her head, and she's got her dog, Whippet, with her, and the dog at some point, like, runs off, and then, I don't know,
she gets, like, ancient mystic wisdom from Moxie from her through the same pet.
Yeah. Yeah, we get the wisdom of the magic hobo, basically. Yeah, it's, you know, because the dog comes back, she you know, takes him in her arms, and then the magic hobo says, if you chase them, you'll never catch them. You think that might be a relevant thing, you know?
I hate it so much. It's the laziest fucking writing that you can possibly do.
Yeah, it's a scene you could have just, like, literally done without.
Not writing something would have been less lazy than that.
Yeah. So, like, I don't know. And then we get the interview itself, and it's very much sort of, like, short, especially, like, the run-up to it is, you know, them coming into the room and stuff. And it's all very much sort of shot like a duel between these two, like, powerhouses, you know. Emily in the left corner, you know, weighing, I don't know, 150 pounds. It's Emily Maitlis, red beta extraordinaire. And in the right corner, it's, you know, affiliated with, for legal reasons we can't say more, you know, Prince Andrew. It's very sort of, you know, it has a kind of dual boxing match kind of thing going on.
Like, this film wanted to be Frost Nixon so much.
Yes, really, yes.
Maybe they should have had, like, Michael Sheen playing Emily Maitlis. Like, I'd watch that.
That'd be pretty sweet, yeah.
Yeah, that would be good, actually.
So
though, it's criminal that you can have Gillian Anderson fucking play her, and it's just not very good.
No.
Like, how does a Gillian Anderson project end up being fucking, like... I know we've been doing the June 2 is mid thing, and it's like, haha, yeah, okay. But, like, this is definitively what mid is. It's so
flat,
neutral in every single thing that it does. Yeah,
it's incredibly flat for what it's supposed to be, and for what it pretends to its audience.
Yeah, I mean,
to
round
be as
about
well.
the time of the key scene, which is obviously the actual interview itself, which, you know, as was pointed out earlier, you could just go and watch the interview itself. I think the precise thought I had was sort of like noticing that one of my socks has a hole in it and thinking, I wonder how many of my other socks have got holes in them. I should go and check. Like, and I did.
Yeah. So the not like the back third of the interview of the movie, except for the last bit, which we want to come back to, is basically it's just the interview, and it's like, yeah, why would you watch this? You can, I think the whole thing is just on YouTube. So, like, you know, why? What is the added benefit of doing this again? Unless you, you know.
Well, Rob, you get to cut away to people in the room emoting and gurning to what's happening in the interview. And then afterwards you get to stress that Prince Andrew thought it went quite well, which is... So, like, I'm sorry, but there's no way. Like, he could tell during the interview itself that it was going badly if you watch the actual interview. But they felt for dramatic purposes he had to be completely oblivious and caught off guard by how bad it was. And,
so that you can have a fucking... Yeah, the only reason to do that, though, is so that you can have, like, a got you scene where, you know, it's filmed like a fucking Cold War Steve fucking dog shit post. Let's have the fat naked man look at his phone. Ha ha ha, satire. Fuck you, Cold War Steve, you stupid lib cunt.
Yeah, but again, like, Rufus Sewell has fun as Prince Andrew, just being like an utterly spoiled prick. You know, he just really has fun with it. But once again, like, they get into a bit more detail about, like, the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein's and the things that Prince Andrew was involved with, and then none of it is, like, shown or discussed in any great detail. Like, the moment they start talking about it, like, they have some of her minions, like, backstage, like, throwing photos on the desk saying, see if they come after us, we have the evidence. It's just like, was that necessary then? Like, well, again, why are you continually doing tell not show? It was one of the things that really just, like, bugged me about this movie.
It's so, you shouldn't be able to fucking, like, if you recreate this interview, which they effectively fucking did in a near shot fucking way, like,
it's sort of like Gus Van Sant's Psycho, but for, like, shit British journalism, like.
Yeah, do you know what it has the air of? This has the air of a docudrama that went too far, and I mean that in the sense of, like, it was clearly more of a documentary that they had a few scenes to slot in a dramatization, and they just forgot to say, please stop dramatizing things.
They're still dramatizing things now. It's awful.
The one thing I wanted to highlight is, like, that's something I genuinely I have some thoughts about, but I'm more curious about you guys. It's like, so about halfway through the interview, there's, like, a quick cut where Ananda, like, sort of says, "Oh, you have to be precise about the dates," and, you know, she can see this not going that well, and she sort of tries to save Prince Andrew from himself, which obviously doesn't work, but, you know, she tries. And it's like, I couldn't work out, because, like, also if you see the posters for the movie, the poster for the movie is, like, one of the two is, like, Prince Andrew shot from behind, and in front of him, like, sort of staring at him, are Gillian Anderson, Billy Piper, and Dan Keeley Hawes. So the three of them. And it's like, I can't work out whether or not, are they all meant to be, I don't know, for lack of a better word, sort of words of, like, girl bosses running things? Like, are we supposed to, is Miranda supposed to be someone, like, we're supposed to sympathize with? Is she, like, a good like, I didn't understand what the movie was trying to do with, like, with her in particular.
The movie doesn't have the ability to distinguish between journalist and PR person.
That feels appropriate, though.
Mainly because there is no difference between journalist and PR person anymore. Like, that's what they're the same fucking thing, and the movie knows that. That's why they're all the same and effectively interchangeable. They just have slightly different interests, and the interest would be, as far as the characters are all concerned, is, like, speaking the truth they know to be true, etc. And that's the important thing. Keeley Hawes works with and for Prince Andrew, and knows that he's quite a nice guy, etc., and she wants that to come across. That's why once, you know, the charm will kick in, and once they get to see him and speak to him, he'll be human, etc., etc. And obviously the opposite side of that is Mateless and fucking McAllister. But the film doesn't care to distinguish between the two concepts, and the marketing not doing that as well doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah, I found her representation throughout it, and especially sort of given the promo materials, like, because, like, the real Miranda has, like, yes, she was fired after this, but, like, there were no further consequences. Like, she's never, so far as I know, I could be wrong, but, like, has, like, expressed any sort of regret over the part she may or may not have played in, you know, Prince Andrew's affairs and all that. You know, it's just kind of, that's just kind of vanished into thin air. It's just kind of a weird thing to, like, sort of just disappear off in the distance. Whereas she's, you know, clearly one of the more sympathetic people in the movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, she's going to be, because she's the only one in there with, like, a fucking impossible job. Like, Billy Piper's responsible for booking people. Emily Maitlis is responsible for sitting in front of a camera and asking some questions that 4 other people helped her put together. Prince Andrew is a fucking prince. She's the one that's got to manage the reputation of a guy who is friends with a paedophile. Like, she is the one with the difficult job in this.
So then, like, interview ends, and, you know, it's gone now, it's gone. Everybody, I think, who's listening to this will know roughly what happened after. But then, you know, they sort of make a big deal, sort of like there's sort of kind of, I don't know how else to describe it, like sort of like a weird kind of like Jason Bourne type vibe, where like they need to get the tape out, and, you know, like he has to go on the scooter, and there's like, is there a car following them, and the music gets all tense.
One thing I thought about at this point, you know, when they put the interview out, and basically the consequences are like people on Twitter say, oh yeah, Andrew comes across badly here, and it's on like a big screen in town, and people are looking at it and going, oh, look at that. Like, one thing I thought of was, and sorry if it's a spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it, but one of my favourite scenes in any movie of, you know, the kind of last 10 years or so is the bit in Boots Riley's Sorry to Bother You, where the protagonist has sort of found out the thing that's happening, and his thought is, I know what will happen. I will like go to my senator, and you know, the good people of American politics will sort it out. And then there's like a smash cut to the senator like announcing a kind of partnership deal with the people doing the awful thing, and like shaking hands and like handing over a big novelty check. And that's not quite what happens here, but, you know, I kind of thought same sort of level of like, okay, well, we did this, and, you know, nothing substantive has really changed. You know, at the end, they tell you, like, Andrew steps back from his royal duties and gets stripped of his titles and, you know, gives out some compensation. It's like, well, okay, fine, but what does that sort of substantively change for anybody else? Like,
it trended on Twitter. They had, like, you know, people at the BBC looking at account of, like, tweets about them going,
I've trended on Twitter, and, like, look where we are now. I mean, like...
that whole bit where they've got the big wall of, like, fucking metrics and shit up, I imagine that's what TweetDeck looks like in Minority Report.
The representation of TweetDeck was very, very funny. And yeah, like I said, sort of where you just like, you got sites of the people saying Epstein didn't kill himself. Like,
yeah, the only thing that is kind of funny, because I do remember this from like the right before it actually aired, was that like on the morning before this thing went live, that like a bunch of the papers, and especially like, you know, the tabloids that are the real, you know, heart of the working people of Britain, you know, had written these stories of like, oh yeah, the Newsnight interview tonight, and you know, insiders say that Prince Andrew comes across really well, and it's like, I remember those stories, and that was quite funny. And then, you know, we see the consequences, so the thing goes out. There's like a brief moment of like pretend tension. It was like, oh, is the royal family going to spike it at the last moment? You know, they're in like the elevator, and it looks really tense, but it's like, we know what happened. Like, we know from the jump what the end result of this is. So, like, any tension is just dead as a fucking doornail.
It's the prequel problem. It's like, you know how it's going to turn out, so don't try and build drama on ambiguity about how it's going to turn out. You know?
Yeah, like the Titanic films, you know, in various different forms, you know, at least smart enough to not do that. Like,
no, they do the car crash slow motion horror of it, where it's like, you know, the audience knows what's going to happen, so let's like just show the horror of it unfolding, which unfortunately, you know, you can't really do through this sort of thing.
You can. You just watch the interview again.
Because that's where the horror is. The horror isn't in the consequences. It should be, but it's not.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're close to the end of the movie now, and then, you know, obviously everybody reacts. Like, you know, we see pictures of all the TweetDecks, and, you know, Sam is a real person now, because, like, somebody acknowledges her on Twitter that she's done a great job.
Look, I thought if these people went on Twitter, all they got was, like, you know, abuse from the hard left. Like,
yeah. And then all the posts happen, and everybody's posting about it, and the guy in her kebab shop is talking about it, and, you know, things are great afterwards, I assume. I haven't checked. You know, like, so anyway, end result, Miranda gets sacked, Prince Andrew gets demoted after we see Rufus Sewell's naked ass for a moment, because, you know, he's stripped of his dignity now, you know, it's a very subtle metaphor.
Very clever, very good quality, fuck off. Honestly, like, nothing made me more fucking mad than that one scene in particular, because it was so fucking unnecessary and so just gratuitously fucking self-congratulatory, even more than the fucking the This Is Newsnight fucking speech.
They're both pretty fucking insufferable, yeah.
Oh, dreadful, yeah.
Actually, I have that full quote.
Oh, please do.
Yeah. This is what Newsnight is. We put the time in to get the stories other shows won't, like Jeremy Corbyn's hat.
I'm booking Nigel Farage 17 times in a row.
And booking Generation Identity after a racist massacre.
Yeah.
Stories that need to be told, that people care about, hold the powerful to account, and give victims a voice. This is after 4 years of doing nothing but Monster and Corbyn.
Yeah.
And like, that give victims a voice. What? Are we mentioning them at this point in the film now?
Commentary.
Is it okay to bring them up? Like, the film goes so fucking hard on just avoiding the wider consequences of everything that's happened here, to the point where it doesn't even really bring up when, you know, the last day that Epstein didn't kill himself.
Yeah, it's. I mean, but what I find so interesting about it is, like, for a movie that you know, at least pretends to be, or says it is, like, sort of obsessed with, you know, media and scoops and look at how they can bring the powerful down and so on and so forth. It's a remarkably, like, sort of negative impression of the media itself. Like, there's no again, for a movie that calls itself Scoop, there's no scoops. Or if there are, they're not made by the Newsnight team. Everybody else does the actual, you know, the only person who does a scoop, quote unquote, which was one, certainly, is like the paparazzi guy who gets that picture of the two of them in the park after running the triathlon.
Yeah, like 9 years before.
Yeah, and that's, everybody else is kind of just like, oh yeah, no, that was a thing that happened. Like, it's just, it's a really weird way of, like, making this work or not work. Like, it's you know, and then we get the little cards at the end saying, you know, what happened to everybody after. It's like, okay, so, you know, Emily Maitlis is still Emily Maitlis, Sam McAllister
still at large, yeah.
Yeah. When
she has never been brought to justice.
Yeah, if you can find her, no one else can help. But and then, you know, and Sam McAllister, if it gets a job teaching at LSE or something.
No longer in journalism. Yeah.
No longer in journalism.
Like 3 years later, or whatever it is. Like.
Yeah. Journalism completed it, mate.
That's how I tell it, yeah.
And then, but then, of course, the main thing is, and I know, Juliet, that's what you were posting earlier on Twitter as well. It's like, yeah, and Prince Andrew, who has been stripped of some of his uniforms and doesn't get to go on quite so many trips anymore. It's like, okay, was that it? You know, could we not do better on any of this?
Did he not get, like, some sort of vague fucking promotion again not that long ago?
I mean, I think after his mummy died, you know, he was kind of out and doing the kind of like, my mum's died, I'm sad, can't you, like, let me come out and play again now? I'm
sure he got tipped for doing, like, slightly more stuff after she died. I'm sure there was something that happened there, and I thought, this is
another thing that the film isn't really capable of touching on, because it's just one of the many things that, you know, as we sort of talk about a lot, it's not really allowed to say, which is that, like, the public sphere, like, I mean, you know, the British public sphere is just a flaming fucking crater, like at the end of a Marvin the Martian cartoon at this point. But, like, one of the things about it is that one of the reasons it's like that is because, like, the concept of shame has just been thrown out of the window by, like, the right, who will just get, you know, kind of caught doing something that, you know, in an age not too long ago probably would have been a career ender, and you wouldn't show your face again, and they just, like, carry on showing their faces anyway. I mean, like, how many fucking books has Johann Hari published since he was like eventually let go by the Independent, not even sacked, like allowed to fucking resign over the sort of like just multiple cases of just plagiarism and just outright making shit up that he'd been doing ever since his like Cambridge University days when he got sacked from the student newspaper there. Like, if you don't want there to be consequences and you're powerful and well connected enough, like, there don't have to be really. I mean, yeah, there are consequences for Andrew, but like none of them are particularly meaningful, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that's like for me like the most sort of revealing thing is like, oh yeah, like the person for whom the consequences should have been highest and should have been, you know, have led to criminal investigation, you know, if nothing else. Oh no, that's, you know, he just walks away. It's really quite something. So yeah, that's but you know, don't worry about it. Emily
watch the film, everyone.
Is on the case. That was it. That was that.
Don't.
Yeah.
I would say not even don't watch the film. Cancel Netflix.
Yeah.
But yeah, have the newsagents done a podcast about it yet?
Literally no one knows, and we'd like to keep it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, some secrets we have to keep. I think that's.
I can't imagine how bad that would be to hear Emily Maitlis's take on the movie about Emily Maitlis's great work.
Oh, there is a Deadline story with Emily Maitlis talking about it.
See, I mean, there's a good chance Emily Maitlis isn't too impressed with it because she's making her own fucking film about it. So,
yeah,
I hope so. I hope she hated it.
Yeah, the long story short, she hasn't seen it and probably will maybe get around to it at some point.
Yeah, sure,
whatever makes her most uncomfortable, that's what I wish. Just fucking awful. Like, Rob, you're not allowed to pick anything again.
Yeah, next time we're doing the new Radu Jude film, all right? Like, it's called "Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World." It's really good.
Well, I just thought, you know, it'd be nice to get, you know, Juliet, it'd be nice to get you on to talk about, you know, culture instead of, you know, horrible, depressing things. But
that's what I do, you know. I'm a cultural critic.
Well, you know,
yeah.
We could have watched like anything else.
Yeah,
really,
Juliet. Why don't we get you back on to talk about the Alex Garland spectacular Civil War?
Oh, okay, with Andy and Go and Helen Lewis as consultants.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yet another person I have, shall we say, connections to.
Yeah, I would very much like to watch that utter fucking slop.
Oh
because
my God.
I'm sure it will be dog shit.
But I just followed like Flying Rodent sharing the interviews with Alex Garland where he's like, I think the left needs to get in the business of winning elections. She's like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah.
Yeah, the film's bound to be good.
Another one of those statements that sounds kind of fine if you sort of disregard any kind of context or, you know, subtextual meanings there. Like,
in this context, there was like another, I think it was actually like Guardian editorial that about the like upcoming presidential elections in France this year that said, you know, oh, the left needs to get its act together.
I read that, yeah.
And basically ditch Mélenchon and just like, you know, work together, i.e. under fucking Macron. Like, oh, okay.
Sick of this shit. Vote blue no matter blue. Nah, get fucked. I'm not having it. It's bad, but yeah, I think the next film we watch should be something slightly stupider than this because this was just miserable piss.
Just boring, really, really boring.
Civil War.
Unless Jerry Racewar fucking comes out with something out of the blue.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, Jerry Racewar and the mind-losing transphobe.
I've heard that Civil War is boring, though. Like, I don't mean to like deflate it before we get started.
I have no trouble believing that.
So,
at least something will explode at least once, though.
Yeah, right.
No,
that's
right,
it. I'm
fair.
not fucking watching it.
Yeah, you're taking a firm anti-explosion stance.
Anti any kind of action, really. You'd think I would have liked Scop, but no.
radical anti-action action.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Well, we don't have anything left to say about this fucking film. So, I think we can just call this one here, folks.
Yeah,
You didn't do comment or
George's
commentary.
Day.
No, we don't do them for these.
Right. Well, I've just checked, and the news agents have done a podcast about St. George's Day and what English this really is. So I'm going to go and listen to that.
Well, have fun.
Readers know I am not, in fact, going to go and listen to that.
Nah, I think you're lying. But did you see, by the way, that Channel 4 has announced? I think it's Channel 4 that they announced their election night special, and it's the news nights and the rest is politics.
Tory Rory and the Butcher of Fallujah. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
The only time I want to see Alistair Campbell on TV, right, is if there's a fucking camera on a car that he's locked in downtown Fallujah and it's just on screen until something happens.
Well, on that note then, goodbye.
Goodbye.
You can get fucking bonus episodes, patreon.com/praxiscast, twitch.tv/praxiscast for streams, and merch available, praxiscast.tmail.com. Juliet, is there anything that you would like to plug?
You can find all of my work and writing and films that I've made at julietjacques.com. A couple of exciting projects, but they're not out yet. So all the stuff that is out is there.
See, that's how you do suspense. If only this film knew that. All right. Thank you very much for coming on, Juliet. And
cheers, always a pleasure.
To the listener, we will see you all on the next one, or on the Patreon, where you should be. Bye.
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 Bye.